Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the BeQuran Podcast. In today's episode, we're diving into one of the most pivotal and often debated events in Islamic history, Eid al-Ghadir.
It's a moment that raises some really important questions about leadership after the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Was it divinely appointed, or was it left to the Muslim community to decide?
We'll be exploring patterns in the Quran, looking at how leadership was established with previous prophets, and how the prophet's own actions during his lifetime reflect that same model.
And of course, we'll be unpacking the powerful declaration made at Ghadir Khumm, where the Prophet appointed Imam Ali in front of thousands of companions.
Whether this is your first time hearing about Eid al-Ghadir or you're revisiting it with new perspective, this episode is all about reflecting on divine guidance, authority, and what it all means for our faith today.
Let's get into it. Bismillah.
Today, we're digging into a really significant historical event for Muslims, Eid al-Ghadir.
Absolutely. It's an event that, well, it sparked some fundamental questions.
Exactly. Questions like, did Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, actually appoint a successor?
Yes.
Specifically Imam Ali. And, if he did, then why wasn't that appointment followed by everyone?
That's the big puzzle for many, right? And for this deep dive, our mission, so to speak, is really to focus on that first part. Was there truly a prophetic appointment, or was leadership basically left up to the community to figure out? And how do we approach that?
Well, I think the key is looking at precedents.
We need to see the patterns historically and in the Quran. That helps frame the Ghadir event itself.
Okay, so before we get into precedents, let's quickly set the scene for Eid al-Ghadir itself. This takes place on the 18th day of Dhul Hijjah. That's the last month in the Islamic calendar. And critically, it's during the Prophet's final year.
The final year, yeah.
Very significant timing. And the location, Ghadir Khumm. Can you talk a bit about why that place was chosen?
Well, Ghadir Khumm wasn't just some random spot. It was essentially a crossroads near a pond. Pilgrims returning from Hajj with the Prophet, thousands of them, would naturally pass through there, heading back to their different regions.
So it was a strategic place to gather everyone one last time.
Exactly. It's where the routes diverged. And it was there, in that heat, that the Prophet stopped this massive caravan and delivered a sermon, a really crucial sermon. He announced that his time in this world was coming to an end, that he'd soon meet his Lord. And it was during this sermon that he explicitly appointed Imam Ali. He called him the Mawla, the master of the Muslims, and his Khalifa, his successor.
So a very public, very clear declaration at a key moment.
Extremely public, and that's why it remains such a foundational event, shaping discussions about leadership right up to today.
Okay, so that sets the stage. Now let's tackle that core question you mentioned.
Yes, the question of whether the Prophet actually appointed anyone or if it was left open.
Because some people do argue he left
It to the community, precisely. And the best way to examine that claim, I think, is to look at the patterns established before Ghadir. How did things usually work according to the Quran and history?
All right, so precedent number one, let's talk about prophets themselves. In the Quran, does Allah ever say to a community, okay, folks, pick your prophet?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And the answer, when you look through the Quran, is just no. It never happens that way.
Never.
Never. Allah always chooses his messengers. Think about it. Allah chose Adam as the first Khalifa on earth. He chose Dawood as a Khalifa. He explicitly states he chose the families of Ibrahim and Nuh, Abraham and Noah,
over all other people. So the pattern is divine selection.
God chooses. People don't elect their prophet.
Exactly. It's a consistent divine prerogative, not a human choice. Okay, so that's clear for prophets themselves. But what about the next step? What about successors after a prophet, or leaders appointed by a prophet for a specific task, or during their absence? Does the pattern change? Do the people get to choose?
Excellent question. And again, the Quran gives us some really clear examples that seem to follow the same principle: appointment, not election.
Okay, like what?
Well, take Prophet Musa. Remember when the children of Israel asked him to bring 70 men to witness him receiving the scriptures? Did Musa tell them, okay, hold an election, pick your 70 representatives? No. The Quran indicates he chose them himself.
He selected them.
He selected them. And then there's another one with Musa when he went up Mount Sinai for 30 or 40 days to receive the Torah. A very significant absence. Did he say, figure out who's in charge while I'm gone? No. He explicitly appointed his brother, Harun, Aaron, to be his successor during that time.
Appointed his brother. Again, direct appointment.
Direct appointment. And then there's the third really interesting example, also involving the children of Israel.
Okay.
Okay? They needed a king, they were oppressed, and they asked their prophet at the time to pray to Allah to appoint someone to lead them.
So they asked for a divinely appointed leader.
Yes, and their prophet prayed, and Allah chose Talut, who you might know as Saul.
Ah, Talut. I remember the reaction to that choice wasn't exactly enthusiastic from everyone.
Not at all. That's the key part of the story. The people objected. They said, why him? He's not rich. He's not from the elite. They questioned Allah's choice based on worldly status.
And what was the response?
The response through their prophet was that Allah chose him precisely because he gave him abundance in knowledge and strength, the qualities needed for leadership, not wealth or status. Which sounds like a very strong parallel to the objections raised when Prophet Muhammad appointed Imam Ali.
Interesting. So people questioning a divine or prophetic appointment based on their own criteria.
Exactly. So looking at these examples, Musa choosing the 70, Musa appointing Harun, Allah choosing Talut despite objections, what's the pattern you see?
Well, it seems remarkably consistent. Whether it's a temporary leader, a king, or representatives for a specific mission, the pattern is always appointment, either directly by God or by the prophet acting on divine guidance. It was never presented as something the community should decide through consensus or popular vote.
It really isn't. The principle seems to be selection based on divine wisdom or prophetic insight.
Okay, so we have precedent from previous prophets in the Quran. What about Prophet Muhammad's own practice during his life, his seerah?
That's the crucial next piece. Did the prophet ever leave Medina, even for a short campaign, without appointing someone to be in charge? Did he ever say, negotiate leadership, or offer someone a role for tribal support? Or when he sent out a military detachment, did he say, figure out who your commander is?
And the implication from the sources is no.
Exactly. The historical records suggest he always appointed a leader from Medina when he left. He always appointed commanders for military expeditions. His practice was entirely consistent with the Qur'anic precedents.
So, appointment was his standard operating procedure.
It appears to be, yes, aligning perfectly with the patterns set by previous prophets.
And the examples in the Quran. Wow, okay, so putting this all together, this deep dive reveals a really consistent thread.
It does. Absolutely.
Looking at the Quranic examples and looking at the prophet's own actions throughout his life, the pattern is undeniable. When it came to prophets, their successors, temporary leaders, even military commanders, it was always about appointment.
Yes, appointment either directly by Allah or by the prophet acting on divine guidance. It was never presented as something the community should decide through consensus or popular vote.
And that, I think, firmly addresses that first part of our question. Was anyone appointed? The answer, based on both the Quran and the prophet's own life, overwhelmingly points to appointment as the established method.
Which really sets the stage for understanding Ghadir Khumm itself. The idea of an appointment wouldn't have been something out of the blue.
Not at all. It fits the established pattern. So that leads us to a final thought for you, the listener, to reflect on. If leadership in these major religious contexts has consistently been established through divine or prophetic appointment rather than popular choice, what does that tell us about the nature of divine guidance, about authority and faith, and what it all means for our faith today?
Something definitely worth pondering.